As I think if you saw from the email that Glenn may be late or may not be joining us at all. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:01. And if he comes along, then certainly we'll get him involved with the process. So as I'd sent you an email earlier this afternoon, we do have representatives from General Code who are going to give us a PowerPoint presentation. I know I sent everybody the proposal on Sunday. Hopefully you had a chance to look at that. So unless anybody has any objections, what I'd like to do is to go through with public comment, approval of minutes. I've got one thing on new business, and then we'll turn it over to Carolyn from General Code. And then based on our 1 hour time limit, I'm going to recommend that the chapter review we're going to do, we hold off until the next meeting and just can pick it up there. Is everybody agreeable to that?
I'm agreeable to it.
Okay. All right, then is there anybody on that I can't see for public comment that would like to say anything? Okay, not seeing any or hearing any. We'll move on to approval of minutes. And would somebody give me a motion to approve the minutes of March 25th?
So moved.
All right, Walt Meisner moved. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Dave Perry, second. Okay. And any discussion, comments about the minutes? Okay, then I'll call the roll. Bill Johnson, yes. Walt Meisner?
Yes.
Marshall Dennis?
Yes.
Dave Perry?
Yes.
Okay, and one abstention from Glenn Hathaway. And next up would be the minutes of April 1, which came over today. Did everybody get a chance to look at those?
I did. I move approval.
All right, Walt Meisner has made a motion to approve the minutes of April 1. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Dave Perry has seconded that motion. Any questions, comments, changes? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Bill Johnson, yes.
Walt
Walt
Meisner,
Meisner.
yes.
Marshall Dennis,
Yes.
Dave Perry.
Yes.
Okay, that takes care of that. And the only thing I have on new business is we talked about 2 grant applications that the town had made last week. One in the amount of $12,500 and the other of $33,000. We have been we have been awarded those grants. So that's good news. So depending on, you know, if we do anything tonight as far as choosing a vendor to help us with this process, then whoever that is, then I think the town administrator is going to reach out to the folks from Executive Office of Administration and Finance and see if the $12,500 grant can be used to apply to this project that we're working on. And I think the $33,000 one, we're looking at trying to do something with mapping with. So I just want to make everybody aware of that we did in fact receive those, which is good news for us.
I think that's excellent news.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about either of those? I don't have a lot of details on them, but.
Just that I think it's excellent. I'm really happy that both those grants came through. It couldn't be better news.
No, thank you. I think it was good work on Brian's part, and I don't know if Rosemarie had submitted those or who did, but it's certainly going to help the cause. Anybody have any other new business? Okay, then Mary, are you still with us?
I am, yes.
Perfect. So Carolyn, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yep, I'm back.
Okay, so as I had said earlier, I sent the proposal from General Code over to everybody on Sunday. And Carolyn and what was the other lady's name?
Jeannie Sanders.
Okay, I gotta write that down because I'll forget. Have agreed to join us on short notice to walk us through the proposal. Carolyn, would you prefer us to wait till the end with questions or ask them along the way? How would you like to proceed?
Whatever works for you. The presentation that I put together is very brief because I did want to give you time for questions and also give Jeannie time to show you around E-code as well. So I can start with the proposal. There, I do have a little Q&A time at the end there, but
Okay.
if a question comes up, just jump right in.
Okay, so Mary, so I click on share screen, is that the deal?
Yep, she can actually, Carolyn can try to load her slideshow on.
Yep, I should be good. Hold on, let me just put it in. Thought I had it all set up, and of course I didn't. Hang on one second.
Dave, what's for dinner? I got mine in, so I can be sarcastic about it.
Leftovers, leftovers.
All right, so can everybody see that?
Yep, I'm trying to get it
Yes.
in. There we go. Can you see it in slideshow presentation?
We can, so take it away, Carolyn.
Okay. First, I'm Carolyn Yetto. I'm the account manager for New England. I have been with General Code for going on 2 years this summer. Absolutely love my territory. Love getting out to Massachusetts anytime I can. I happen to live in Troy, New York, so I'm only a few hours away from you guys. And I used to live in North Brookfield, so I'm sure you're familiar with the Brookfields. And Jeannie is our corporate trainer, and she's going to be showing you around E-code. Jeannie, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything at this time.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. I guess that's what I'll say. Can't wait to show you about the online code.
Great. So just a little bit about General Code. We have been codifiers for over 58 years now. We're headquartered in Rochester, New York. And as I said, I actually live in Troy, so I'm a little bit closer to my territory. Currently, we have over 3,200 clients across 30 states. 90% of those municipalities have online code through E-code. We do about 2,600 updates a year to our code. And you can see our market share in green across the country. And we have over 135 customers in Massachusetts at this time. And I believe about 120 of those use E-code. So I just wanted to show you the initial codification plan that Bill and I had first talked about. Just sort of a visual of the details that are in the proposal. So once the contract is signed, we would just make sure that we have all of the content before we begin the project. Usually within 30 days, you'll hear from the editor assigned to the project, and you'll have a launch. The first piece of the project is the organizational analysis, and that's where the editor will basically build a structure to the code, table of contents, take a look at logical placement of all of the content. It would go back to the town for approval, and then she would develop the draft. The draft would then be submitted, and along those lines, through this type of project, there would be editorial services, high-level copy editing and proofreading services. So should be looking for grammatical errors, typos, things of those nature. But this type of project would not include that editorial and legal analysis as part of the main project scope. We've put that in as a post-project option for you. Once the town reviews and approves the draft, then it would be set up and ready for print, and the town would adopt the code. Once everything is finalized, it would go into E-code, and then you would get your print copies as well. And we work in XML format, which means we're able to build the code in this type of format. We're able to provide multiple outputs for you. So your paper code will be the exact same copy as your online code. Does anyone have any questions about this? Is sort of the high level that's detailed on pages 3 through 9 in the proposal. So I don't know if anybody has questions at this time.
I'm just curious about what E-code is as opposed to, paper copies.
So eCode is our online code platform, and that's what Jeannie is going to show you. We would basically house your online code, and it's fully searchable. It'll be available to the public. You can download, print, you can email sections of the code to people who are requesting something. And Jeannie's going to take you through that. So you'll have a very good understanding at the end of this, what eCode is.
Okay, but it is something that you host. quote
We
unquote.
host it, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and that would be an annual fee for the
Yeah.
hosting. That's part of the proposal.
Okay, got it.
I had two questions. One was just a curiosity question. Why aren't you in Vermont?
We're trying. Vermont tends to be self-codifiers. We have a couple conversations going on in Vermont. We're
Okay.
doing our best. I think we actually do have one or two customers, longstanding customers. I don't know that they don't have eCode.
Okay.
But
It just
We're
seemed
work-
like it was kind of an outlier considering you have the rest of New England.
yes, exactly. I'm trying to make headway in there, but
Well, stop picking on us Vermonters. Let's go.
I was born in Vermont. I was born in Burlington, so.
And the second question is more about, I understand the codification and I think what you do, you help us basically get it organized and more accessible to the community and,
Mhm.
understand, do in any way, given your vast experience with doing bylaws for other towns, and other than just your copy editing, is there any sort of analytical service you can provide
Yes.
within this contract or as an additional services to this contract with regards to bylaws that are, awkward or effective or, in other words, we're just basically going along with what we have. And we know there are issues and problems, and we know that there are things that are done in other towns, and we can do some of that work on our own. But you have much more expertise and experience in reviewing this, and that could be of an asset to us,
Mhm.
given your experience. What would that additional services be, and how do you do that?
That's actually part of this proposal that we put
Okay.
together for you. In my conversations with Bill, that's what we call an editorial and legal review, and that's that deep dive into the code, checking for inconsistencies, duplications. It's actually on my next slide.
Mhm.
We determined to put that in as an option post-project because in our initial conversations, it sounded like it was more important to get the current code online and accessible as you
I
move
agree with that.
forward with your review.
I
So that-
definitely agree with that.
So it's a little bit more of a back end way of doing it. And I'll be honest with you, it costs a little bit more because the editor is reviewing the code 2 times versus 1, but it can be budgeted out over several fiscal years.
Well, and one of the curiosities I have, and this is just a broad example. For example, we have an economic development and committee in town. And there are things in bylaws that are known to create more economic development for one reason, elimination of parking things or whatever. You hear all of these different kinds of ways in which you can inspire economic development. That high level of analysis, after we get it codified, after we get it online and we have something to work with, is what I'm interested in getting professional advice on. But
So I'll move to the next
Okay.
slide just to show you some of the details of that process. So typically the initial project that we just talked about on the previous slide takes about 9 to 12 months for completion if all milestones are met on time. So you're talking close a year, maybe sooner if the town works through that organizational analysis, meets those milestones early. It could be as soon as 9 months. In fact, Rentham, Mass, I think that was one of the contacts I gave you, Bill. They just completed their code project and it went online yesterday.
I spoke with town clerk down there.
Yeah, and Cindy just took the reins on that project and she got it done in 9 months. So it's the same type of project. So anyways, we added this post-project editorial and legal analysis, which we call an EA. And these are some of the things that will be, this is the deep dive into the code review. Identifying duplications, conflicts, inconsistencies between or within sections of the code, as well as Massachusetts statutes. Practical recommendations to make for your legislation to make it more enforceable. We've added some examples here that you can take a look at, and I'll follow up with this slide deck with Bill to share. Suggestions regarding fees, fines, penalties, ways to modernize legislation. If there's outdated bylaws, those will be identified in this type of analysis. And then integrated in, we do this code review, it's integrated right into eCode 360 and easy access for you to review by the town and make those decisions. And Jeannie's going to demonstrate a little bit of that code review process. I think we are at Jeannie's demonstration. Are you all set, Jeannie?
I am.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop share.
And I am going to share, I'm going to bounce around for a couple of different E-codes. I'm going to start here in the town of Templeton. Their project is finished and their code is up on E-code. And so this is how they choose to make it available to their public. It's off their clerk's web page, and it's just a simple click and you access the town bylaw. So if we lived in Templeton, this is what we would do. We click here and access. And as Carolyn said, the whole code is right here. If I lived there, I can click on any one of these chapters. It's going to open up that chapter and show you how it's organized. You can read it. You will notice every piece of the code has a little checkbox next to it so that you could work with it. So if I had a question about this, I could click on this little box right here. A new menu just popped right down. I could print that, take it to a neighborhood meeting or come into the town offices. I could email a link. I'm going to click that button just to show you what it does. It opens up your own email client. It configures an email for you with a direct link to that piece of the code. And it's fully editable. So I could click down here and I'm just going to type silly stuff. But, you know, I could say, I read this part of the code and I'm wondering if it says whatever. And you just address it to whomever you're speaking with. The nice thing about that is that it works in both directions. So if I live in Templeton, I can use it to communicate with the town officials. If I work in Templeton, I can use it to communicate back to the residents. If they call in and ask a question, I can select it and send an email and then they have a direct link. They don't have to go looking for it in the code and they have everything that they need. I'm going to click on the home button and give you sort of a general overview of what you're looking at. E-code is more than, believe it or not, just the code, and the code is really the star of the show, and that's what you see here sort of in the center part of the screen. My favorite part of E-code is that not only does it hold the current code, which is you can tell right up here at the top, it is up to date through January of 2020. The last piece of legislation to be incorporated into this code was January of 2020. Any new laws that have been passed are all held in a little table. I'm thinking that municipal users use this little table because it's a beautiful summary. So here are all of the new laws that have been sent into general code, when they were adopted, a little bit about what they are. This is all fully editable. So if you worked in the town and you wanted to make some notes to let the general public know more about this bylaw, you could do that. And over here, a little bit about what chapter that it affects. Again, this is what the municipality kind of uses. because the public, I'm going to click here on the home button and show you that the public doesn't even have to look at that table. Every place in the code that's affected by a new law has what we call a new law indicator. And if you open up that chapter, the bylaw that affects that chapter, or bylaws in this case, are listed right up at the top. Again, there's a link to them so people can open it up, read the entire adopted new bylaw. They can print from here or download, but everything is fully accessible. And again, I said it's one of my favorite features because the E-code then is almost always up to date, right? Code books, you have to wait until you update the code and then you get your new papers to put in your code book and keep them up to date. But the E-code has a way of being somewhat up to date, up to the minute, which is awesome. That's me just being quiet to see if anyone wants to jump in and say anything yet.
There's also a heading for archives.
There is. Now, so Sarah, you hit upon a funny thing. I think I have it open. I can send this to you. You know, one of the things that I do all the time is training, and I had this open from today. This is a full list of all of the features of E-code. So I use it all the time because what Sarah said, archives, you'll notice, are listed right here where my mouse is. The public does not get access to the older versions of the code. And that is purposeful because we don't want them to get confused and possibly be looking at an archived version because it looks just like your code book does today, only, right? There's just little changes. So we make that available so that if you are a logged in user, you work in the town, you get access to extra features. So this is a sheet that I use all of the time to help people understand what does the public get to see and what do I see when I'm a logged in user. So Sarah, do you want me to show you what the archives look like? Is that why you asked?
Well, I'm the building commissioner and I actually do need to go back and look at older versions of the zoning. And so if we uploaded that stuff too, that might be a nice feature. Go ahead.
The way it works is we will keep the archives as you move forward with us. But to my understanding, there's no way to bring your older versions back. I have a little bit of a workaround, but the truth is the archives that you create will be going forward. So it looks like Templeton hasn't been a customer for all that long. I've got another customer open. I got the town of Norwell and I really don't know. So I'm going to open up their archives. A little bit longer and you can see them. And when you click on any one of these, it actually is going to open up the code as it looked on that day. And boy, they made a lot of changes, right? So that was a big update for them. It tells you up at the top that you're looking at an older version of the code. It gives you a link to get back to the current version. And that's how it works. So I'd like to explore a little bit. We might as well, since you asked, since older versions of the code in your case aren't going to be available ready. It's going to be on a go forward basis. One thing you could do is something similar to what Templeton has done. You see over here, there's something called public documents. This is a feature that comes with E-code. So the E-code holds your code. It holds your new laws that we see over here, and it is a repository for anything that you wanted to upload. So Sarah, if you had those in PDF, I would suggest that you put them right here under miscellaneous documents, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. Templeton is using it for special acts and general legislation. You could use it for whatever you wanted to. Now remember, I'm logged in. You sort of can know that I'm logged in because it says log out up here. Because I'm a logged in user, I have the ability to add new documents. Your public, you'll be happy to know, cannot upload public documents to your site, but you can as administrative users. And there's no limit to what you can upload, as many documents as you want. They're stored in Amazon Web Services. They're available all the time. You still retain all the ownership of the files. You're just uploading a copy of them, and then they're available to your public and fully searchable. That's another thing I was going to show you. Let me do a quick search. This is the most popular feature of eCode, the ability to search. So I'm going to click.
I'm sorry, I have to go in just a couple of minutes, and I had
Yeah.
one more question for you.
Please.
Are you able to just download the whole general bylaw as a PDF? Because
Yes.
I found that aggravating in other towns that I've used your system before. The town I used to work in had eCode 360 for their stuff, and the zoning bylaw was this nice PDF that was easy for me to deal with, and the general bylaw was just, you could only deal with pieces of it at a time, and that aggravated me. So I'm hoping that you have the functionality to just be able to download the whole thing as a PDF.
So long as you do not click any of these boxes right here, when you click the download button up here, it's tiny letters, but it says entire code.
Okay.
So I'm going to get not only their bylaws, but their zoning bylaws, everything. The whole thing's going to come in a PDF. If I wanted just zoning, then I would check that chapter, and I could take the building chapters as well. So you can, the one thing that's very valuable about Premium eCode, which is the highest level, it allows you to download PDFs, either the whole thing or any portions. You, in some ways, you're creating your own code book. And even when you update your code book, then you don't have to order a new code book from anyone. You just come in here and download what you need, and it happens like that. Any other question that might have come up, Sarah, as a result of talking about that?
No, that was kind of what I wanted to hear. So that was good.
Awesome. So while I'm in that download button, let's talk about that as well. When the public can download portions of the content, so they don't need to come in and get copies, but the public cannot, and I'm just going to prove this to you, the public cannot download to Word. That is a feature that is reserved for municipal officials, so that if you ever needed to suggest amendment to the code, you could bring it into Word in an editable form and make your amendments. I'm going to search that code like I talked about before, and I'm going to search the code on water. All I did was click in that white search box, type in water, and press enter, and we can see over here that we get 95 results. 94 of those results are in the code. One of them is in public documents. If there had been anything in new laws about water, it would have popped up too. Every time you do a search, all of those 3 important pieces of information are all searched, and you get the results. So if you wanted to find just that one public document that had water in it, if I click right there, everything else sort of fades away, and then you're just looking at that one thing about water. If I want to see the 94 code results, I click on this. And then as an example, if I'm Sarah and I'm in the building department, I might very well then, instead of trying to sift through 94 results that I might be interested in, I can click right here on filter by chapter, and I can look at all the chapters where it's in, and I can say, I just want to see the hits that are in chapter 267 water use, or I want to see those along with my subdivision of land results. And so that filtering is right there. Every piece of the code is printable or emailable, as you see right here. Little buttons all along the way to help you. If you want to read more about any one of the search results, then you just click that button, and it takes you right to that place in the code. You don't need to turn pages. And then you can, as we talked about, select this piece of the code or even other pieces of the code, print, email, or download a portion of the code. I was just thinking I was going to show you something. Oh yes, I was going to show you another feature that's completely configurable by you, the municipality, is the ability to add notes. The public cannot add notes to your code, but you can. So there's one note in the code in the town of Templeton. If somebody's put a note in the code, then you're going to get to see a little icon telling you there's one there. And this is something that people will use to draw attention to certain areas in the code. So this person has said, I want you to know that in miscellaneous documents, there is the following documents for acceptances and special acts. So it draws people's attention to that. I'm going to open up one that I didn't plan on, but given the questions that just happened, there's a city that does a ton of work with notes. And it's, so you can see over here, every time you add a note, it'll keep track of them. And this is a little table of where they are. But as we said, there's a little icon next to every place where there is a note. So this particular municipality links to all of their building codes right from here. So if I come here and I click on the building code, if I want, I didn't mean to hit that button. If I wanted to access the building code for the city of O'Fallon, there is a link right here. It takes me right out to ICC's website where they have their custom local building code. Everyone can access it right from here. So the city of O'Fallon links to all of their codes, their residential code, their building code, their existing building code. And then they do other very fun links to show that to you. I'm going to click on notes just to summarize them all. One thing I think they do really well after I get through all their building code is every place where there's a license or an application that's required, they link to it right there. So if a constituent is searching in the evening time, trying to figure out what they need for their business, they can access and download applications or even apply right online. So she's got different links all over the place. If somebody wants to print a paper application or apply online, they can do that. And again, these notes are not something that general code creates. You get to control the whole thing yourself. So if forms and applications update, then you can take them down and edit your note and make sure that people can connect to it. I'm going to go over to Norwell for a minute. If you're an administrative user of eCode, you will have this admin button in your black menu bar that the public does not have. When you click on that, it's going to give you analytics about how often your code is used. So it gives you a sense whether people are taking advantage of the code or not. So here in Norwell, they average about 2,000 hits per month, although it's really growing in 2021. They hit over 5,500 last month. And this number for April is all the way up through, what is it, April 8th. The other thing that's really neat about this is if you scroll down, you can see what people are searching the code for. So that's very interesting information. And given that their top search has been the zoning map, I see that, and I don't know if any of you noticed it. I'm going to click on the home button. I see that they've taken advantage of posting their zoning map so that people can get it without having to go on the municipal website and look at where it is. So that's real easy to do. We just can create a link for you and put your zoning map right there in front of people, or you could create a note like you saw a little while ago to link people to anything, to use tables. And so I wanted to say that I looked a little bit at your zoning code. And I noticed that you have a lot of tables. So I've opened up some codes to show you how different municipalities handle various things. So I wanted you to see that tables and drawings can go, and pictures can go right in line with your code. They do not have to be, and in my opinion, they should not be attachments at the top of the chapter. They should be in line. If you have very advanced tables, that's fine. I'll show you how we can handle them. This is a municipality in Maryland. So they have, exaggeration here, 1 million use tables, but it's clearly they don't have 1 million, but you can see there's a lot of them. So what we did for them is we sort of collapsed them down. If somebody wants to see the table, they click on it, it expands to the width of the screen. It allows the people to scroll and read the entirety of this table. And when they're done with what they wanted to do here and they X out of the table, it just takes them back to that place. It makes scrolling through the code a little bit easier. So this is an option for a table. And then another one I just wanted to show you, we do whatever the municipality wants, right? So this particular municipality had a form-based code. They wanted whatever the planning company did for them to come exactly into E-code as it was presented to them. And so we can do all this. We can put maps right in your code and have color-coded tables. And then I'll scroll down. I think this particular municipality has full color pictures and drawings as well. So this gives you a sense of what it looks like if you know you want 2-column format and annotated pictures, we can do that. So I don't need to belabor this point, but I wanted you to see that if you do have a more complex zoning code or you don't want attachments, you certainly don't need to have them. We can put them right here in your code. All of this is fully searchable. So as an example, if I searched on NYSDOT, the New York State Department of Transportation, it would find that. So it's beautifully searchable. I'm looking at who else I had open in case there was something else I wanted to show you. Actually, oh, yes, I have one more thing that I want to show you. I'm going to go back to Templeton. There's one other feature that's very helpful. It's for legislative research. If you're logged in, your public does not have access to this, but if you're logged in, you get access to the multi-code button. I'm going to show you how it works. E-code is showing you all of its online customers. You probably are going to say, that's great, but I don't care how they legislate in Wisconsin. Let's keep it to Massachusetts. So what you would do is come right here to the state field and type in MA. There are the E-codes that are available in Massachusetts. If you said, I want to see just those in Worcester County, ta-da. You could say, I want to search all those codes. I'm going to add those codes to my search using that little plus sign. And so then in the middle of my screen where it says codes to search, it's going to search everybody in Worcester County. And I'm going to come down to the bottom and I'm going to say, I want to see if anybody's got anything in their code about the keeping of roosters. That quickly, it's going to search all 18 codes. It's going to give you the results. There are only 5 results. None of them are new laws. It did search everybody's new laws, by the way, and their public documents. If I want to see those 5 code results, I can click here. So in this case, the minimum standards for keeping roosters, and they're saying you need to have a proper size lot, right? You can click on any one of these results. And in this case, I've clicked on Northbridge's code. It opens up their code and it takes you right to that place in the code. You can select this piece of the code. And just like in your own code, you can download this to Word and begin editing it so that it made sense for you. So that multi-code tool is your way to do any sort of legislative research. Show me what anyone has in their code about short-term rentals. Do any municipalities have anything on tiny houses? All of that, you can do that research right here in a matter of seconds. Then, and I really do like to look at it, so then I always throw this out. And you can always ask me because I like a good puzzle. And I'll see if I can find anything too. And if always you have your legal editor that could help too. Yes?
Does this a feature is only available to those that have the administrative button?
No,
Or
this
to
is a
anybody?
feature that's available to any logged in user. So right here, it's called multi-code. If you're a municipal user, the difference honestly between municipal and administrative user, the administrative users control who logs into the code. They're the ones that post those public documents. So I'm kind of fond of saying, I think that department heads should be administrators or the administrative person to that department so that they could post documents to public documents. But really, as soon as you get to log in, you get those 2, in my opinion, most important features. Your ability to download to Word and use multi-code.
Okay. Cool.
Let me see. So I'm going to do one more thing, and this is going to be a little bit jarring. I'm going to show you something that's definitely in work in progress. In fact, right now I'm running a trial run of our latest product. And when you go to do your editorial and legal analysis with us, you will be using this product. So this is in a test place, so I really want to point that out. These good folks already have E-code, it's online, and they're using it. Now they've had an editorial and legal analysis. It's not a real one because this editorial and legal analysis only has 16 questions. That means the editor has read, theoretically, all of the questions, all of the ordinances and bylaws, and written all their questions. And this is how it would come back to you. I'm going to show you one thing. This is how we control it. The public will never see these questions. And in fact, you will control who sees these questions. So I'm going to that back area. And so when you have an editorial and legal analysis, there's these new columns that get added here. Anyone who gets checked here as a moderator or a reviewer is going to see the questions. So you see there's someone up here called fake user. That person, if they logged in, would not see the questions. Everyone else, it appears to me, would see the questions because they have check marks by them. So this is how it works. The editor has gone right into your code, and every place where there's a little question mark, it means there's a question. And I'm just going to open up one of these. And here it is. This is what it looks like. You expand the question. They tell you a little bit about the code content. Here is your question. And then what do you want to do with it? Do you want to revise it? Do you want to say how it's revised? Do you want to take the editor's opinion on how it should go? And then what you guys can do is maybe Bill would be the moderator and he would assign building related and zoning related questions to Sarah. So then she would know what question she had to answer. If she wanted the attorney to look at it, she could click on the needs review button so that people see it. And this is how it gets changed right in line. I don't know if
So a little bit of a question on that front, because it kind of leads to one that I kind of wanted to go back and ask Caroline about, but it is a process question. Once this thing is all in and approved, there's a bylaw that someone, for some reason, some committee or building commissioner or whatever wants to propose a change to. How do we take this in the easiest possible way and go through the approval process for getting it approved at a town meeting? For example, the example that you just gave, somebody has done this, they do it, the committees review it, we have a public hearing for I mean, how do we communicate that and do that? How does this help us?
So this is definitely outside of my expertise, but I've heard this question a lot, so I'm going to tell you what I know about this. One of the things that general code will do, let's pretend you answered questions just like you said, and somebody answered the way that they did. We'll incorporate that change into your code, but we will also be keeping a very detailed report. And we will present it to you when you go to town meeting to say that we're going to adopt this whole thing as a whole. And it will say specifically all of the changes that were made. So it outlines it. It's nothing that you have to do. It's very, very specific. One of the things that I have heard our editors say, specifically in Massachusetts, and Carolyn, please jump in if there's something I'm not saying right, but they definitely urge you to keep the public abreast of what's going on or what changes you're making so that nothing is a big shock when you get to town meeting. And then one of the other things that we will show you, I'm going to expand a question. Every single question has this option to choose. So deferred decision means, oh boy, this one is one we're not going to get agreement on. So in deference to stopping the project, let's answer as many questions and get it up, and let's take this one thing and do it later and do it separately.
Okay.
Did I even come close to answering any of your concerns?
I think so. But the public, as far as the public's concerned, the bylaw is not changed until the town votes on it. So while all this, and we all know that sometimes these bylaw reviews can take months to actually make the change. You know, somebody goes in there and we have a conflict, we need to make a change. We do this, a monitor, a reviewer, somebody, the public's not seeing that, correct? Only the committees and the people who are.
Yes,
Yeah.
in fact, I'm just going to make something up. Let's pretend you have a deputy clerk. If the deputy clerk is not a reviewer, he or she doesn't even see the questions either. So even people who log in with administrative access, they're not going to see the questions unless they've been tagged as someone who's dealing with the questions.
Okay. So all of this is happening behind the scenes. And then when it's ready to have a public hearing and doing it, we go through that process. We print that stuff behind the scenes, or we make it available to people to look at. And then we do it, and then we go to the town meeting, we get it approved, and we do that. And related to that question is probably going back to the process for what we need to go through to do it. If you've looked at our bylaws at all, they're not organized like this at all right now. And we can't change a single word in them until we go to town meeting. So how does the process of you guys taking this, codifying it, reorganizing it, finding all the edits or whatever, and then us presenting it to the town meeting, obviously before this goes live, because it's not officially a public document until we take all of the different changes, and there'll be dozens, if not hundreds, of changes to our current bylaws just to get the edifications and to get this thing reorganized before it goes. How does that, how in that thing that Caroline put up at the beginning, that where does that process happen? Where does that happen in the process? Does
That
make
comes
sense?
down to that, once you get to that final draft stage, and
You
the
want me to
editor.
stop sharing and then you can share this slide?
Yeah, actually, we can go back to that because we are coming close on the end. Let me see if I can pull it back up. Is it gonna make me go? Okay. Is it showing up, Jeannie, the initial codification plan? Yep.
Sure is.
So the editor will work through that final draft with you, and then at this print publication phase, that's when she will help you with that process. And I can tell you both of our editors in New England have been doing this, getting these codes prepared for town meetings for how long have Deb and Claudia been with us? A very, very long time. So they will definitely work with you through that process. And I would say, I know Bill had made a couple phone calls on some of our contacts. Feel free to contact other communities who have gone through the process and ask what worked for them as far as getting the code adopted.
Okay.
So,
I have one thing I'd like to add here. So let's say you did do the editorial and legal analysis after your code has gone online. So what happens there is there's a large period of time where, let's pretend it's Claudia, is reading your bylaws, and you will maybe hear from her, but you're not going to see any questions. So she prepares all the questions, she reads through everything, doing exactly what Carolyn said in the slide, checking against state statute, checking against other bylaws in your code. And she's creating this. Then the next thing that's going to happen is we're all going to meet. All of us plus Claudia. And she's going to show you where the questions are. She's going to say, you know, if there were particular questions, and she's marked them as critical because you really have to think about this. You can't skip this question. You can't defer it. And then she also will talk about how you get it adopted. A lot of the questions that you're asking now, Walt, is very common when we have our orientation meeting to kick off, okay, town, now you go ahead and look at Claudia's questions and begin to respond to them. The other thing is, through that process, while you're answering those questions, both Claudia and I are available all the time if you have questions or need clarification.
Okay. That's helpful. That's great.
Yep, and I did want to add one thing, and my dogs are not behaving right now, so you can probably hear them in the background, but with this type of project, with this editorial and legal piece coming after the initial code, there are two ways of implementing those changes. You can do basically take all of your responses, everything that you want to include, and basically readopt the code as a whole, which is what Jeannie just mentioned. Or you could also prioritize those changes and do it through the supplementation process moving forward. Make amendments to that particular part of the code and just do it through the supplementation process, which in the supplementation process is post-project. That's basically, you've done all this work, now you want to keep your code up to date moving forward. So there are, and that's detailed in the proposal. So I just wanted to mention that there's two ways you could go, depending on the outcome of that editorial and legal analysis. And like I said, your editor will really work through with you what the best option is for you.
Super. That's excellent.
Can you just quickly go back to the Templeton code,
Yeah, I will.
if
stop sharing.
possible?
Yep.
Let's see.
Just the table of contents. Yes, just scroll down a little bit. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, I mean, you've arranged these, part two anyway, alphabetically. And I notice that the chapters are not consecutive. Why? First of all, why is that?
So that if you wanted to add a new chapter, and I'm looking at something and trying to come up with, perhaps you wanted to have a chapter, these guys have one on dogs and other animals. They might want to have a whole new chapter on poultry, the keeping of chickens. So we have to have room to add a new chapter. So if we wanted to keep it alphabetically, which is what they wanted, we would look here and we want to be able to put the O in between marijuana and property maintenance, and we could use chapter, say, 195. That's the whole reason, so that we make it so that your code is expandable over time.
So in other words, if it's consecutive and you come up with a new bylaw, do you just tack it on to the end?
I don't know what they would do. I've never seen a code that was consecutive. I can tell you that I've seen, let me open another one in
Except for our current code.
The town of North Andover, they sort of bought into the idea that they needed to leave space but they didn't like seeing the broken numbers. And so in my mind, it's a little bit inflated because I do a lot of scrolling.
I would say so.
But it was their option, and I'm glad that you asked the question because it's completely up to you. Most communities, almost all of the communities really buy into that alphabetical thing. Although it is a hard hill to get over sometimes. And so because of that, we always do what we can to help. So if you would take your current bylaws, the way you have them organized in the order you do, and we would create a table that says in your old code, this is what it was called, say Article 7, and now it is Chapter 47. So I don't know that the public would use this as much, but you all who know your code so well, the derivation table allows you to make the transition to the newer code.
Well, our current code, you know, the topics of which and the chapters are just scattered. And so, you know, it would be helpful, as I think you've shown on Templeton's, that, you know, all the water related are in one chapter, all law are in other chapters. But then I was just curious where the question becomes, okay, you know, if they're consecutive as opposed to what you're showing here, then, you know, you have no choice but to put either the new code where you want it and then renumber all the old codes.
Right.
Which
So
is,
one of the things I noticed when I was prepping for this is they do have a new law that I don't know for sure because I didn't read it, but the person who uploaded this new law, they looked at it quickly and they thought, I don't know what chapter it's going to go in. So when they get ready to update their code, Marshall, they'll talk with their primary code contact and say, look, we got this one here. Here are our options. And this is an editor now talking. Here are our options for where that might go. Where did you want it to go? And so that is another question that people ask us all the time. When I'm drafting a new bylaw, do I have to tell you what chapter it goes in? Do I have to do the numbering? And the answer to that is no. You can if you want to, but you don't have to, because there's always going to be that give and take. When we go to update your code, we're going to get your approval before we do it as to where we put it.
yeah, I mean, that just goes to the whole organizational thing about making it simpler for the user to have all the bylaws in common kind of under one heading. So, okay.
I'm just going to jump in because we're close to 7 o'clock. And I don't know how much extra time everyone has. Really, I was just going to do a wrap up with my slideshow, and which I can do.
Oh, go ahead.
But I really want to see if anyone has additional questions that have come up.
Not me. I'm
I mean,
set.
really, it's just why general code? Well, why not? So,
I guess, you know, I guess I'll just say it as a general comment that obviously the operational and mechanical computerized technical components, you know, you can do this, you can do that, blah, blah, blah. But that's all nice. But right at the moment, I think, you know, we're more focused on substance. In other words, you know, our bylaws are so, they need improvement, they need rewriting, they need, you know, editorial commentary, they need legal assurities. And, you know, once that's in place, then you can do whatever you want with a computer system. But to me, it's getting the bylaws verbally in order and placed in an outline that makes sense. That to me is the primary component.
My initial conversations with Bill, and I believe was it Debbie Phillips is the attorney?
Yeah.
Yes. That's why we just talked about this approach because that organizational piece, that structure to the code, I think is going to help you immensely as you move towards that deeper dive into the editorial and legal review.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's a little bit of a I mean, we can create a proposal for you that includes that editorial and legal analysis as part of the entire project. But that type of code project is going to take much longer. That's closer to 2.5 years.
Hmm.
And I know in our initial conversations, we were thinking that it was more important to build some structure first.
Yeah.
And especially with the way that the bylaw review committee is working through the code.
What was kind of a pleasant surprise for me is once you kind of create this structure for us, and once we kind of get it reorganized and into a workable online system that we can do then perhaps it makes the editorial and the legal analysis easier to manage or, to put into effect. So I think you all did an excellent job, and this is quite an interesting product, and I can see why a lot of people are jumping on board for it. So thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank
you. It was fun.
So, does anybody have any other questions?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Dave, you got anything?
You're on mute, Dave. You're still on mute.
I'll take that as a no.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I wanted to see how many hard copies would you make available to the town at the end of this whole project?
I can't think off of the top of my head, Bill. It's in the
2.
proposal. Was it 2?
It's 2 in the proposal, but we can make arrangements to purchase additional copies if we need to.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my question, because I would think that the zoning board, well, all the land use boards would each member would need a hard copy of that, because it's easier to refer to that if we ever go back to having physical meetings again. It would be nice to have a hard copy instead of everybody bringing their laptop or their iPad and trying to go through it that way at a scheduled hearing.
They
We
They
can
would also
source-
be printable.
They are printable, downloadable into PDF and printable right from
Yeah.
eCode as well. So
Sure.
that saves you some cost as
Mhm.
far as, those big volumes of the binders. So
Mhm.
Dave, one of the things that, and I can't remember which town clerk it was, but these books that we're going to get, they've got it set up where you actually have to sign that thing out and you're responsible for it. And if you screw it up and lose it, you're paying for it. Because what happens is that as we make changes and they get updated, you're going to get pages to put in that book. And it's kind of a big deal. And I don't know if they all do it that way, but one of the things that we've come across is that we have multiple copies of multiple different dates and this and that, and the information's all over the place. So obviously, if we travel this road with general code, we'll get to that point and figure out as a community how we want to handle it and what we need for copies and how we're going to do it. Because we all know that we're a mess right now. And the whole idea is to clean up the mess and have that policy, have that procedure going forward that, will allow us not to get in this situation again.
And let's not forget, the reason why we have so much trouble with paper copies and everybody depends on paper copies is because our website is horrendous and you can't find anything. It just, once you get a better system, then I think having a PDF on your iPad is a much easier thing to do. But right now, none of us do that because we don't know what's the most up-to-date version of it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Right,
Okay.
and the online code will always be the most up-to-date version.
That's right, yeah.
But I can tell you from experience with certain communities that have been our customers for a long time, pre-E-code, where they're still maintaining 30 plus hard copies of code,
Mhm.
and you know that they are not all being maintained.
Mm,
The
mm.
ideal one is you have
They're
one
lost
hard
and-
copy,
yeah.
and the ideal one is you have one hard copy in town hall and one hard copy in the library, and you maintain those for people who need to go in and don't have computer access and need to, look stuff up, but yeah, everybody else is doing it online and printing what they need for when they need it.
all right, anything else for Jeannie or Carolyn?
No, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Bill, I'll follow up with the slide deck.
Thank you.
And anything else, if any questions come up, you can, provide my contact information to everyone. They can contact me anytime.
Very good. All right, so you all set, Carolyn? Anything else you want to leave with us before we close this section out?
We're good. I think so. Jeannie, anything?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies,
Thank you
thank you
all
so
very
much.
much.
It was a good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, you as
Bye.
well. Okay. Mary, you're still here.
I am Bill.
Boy, we're paying overtime for this. I know we are.
Who's WG?
I'm not sure. They came in a little late.
All right, folks, what would you like to do now? Do you want to discuss making a decision about how we want to move forward? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
May I ask a question?
Hey, Sarah,
So-
absolutely.
Aside from kind of cleaning up the code and fixing inconsistencies, which we could do, but it's easier to farm it out, and hosting it on this service, what else is this company providing? I'm sorry, I didn't see the proposal. Can you just tell me in a nutshell what else we'd be getting out of this? You said something about mapping, but it doesn't look like it's anything more than hosting mapping from what
Well,
I
no.
gathered.
No, these folks are not a mapping company. There are other, we're working on some other avenues with the mapping piece to try to get that work begun. I don't know if it's, I think there's conversations with MRPC. I think we're looking at a couple
Okay.
of grants that we're applying for to try to
So-
get the map piece moving as well. But the map piece is outside our purview as it relates to
Okay. I got the impression before this meeting that that was going to be part of this, so I was wondering.
No.
So this is purely just really hosting, cleaning up the code and hosting the code, right?
Well, that, and again, one of the options that's available is the deep dive, looking at our existing code, conflicts within the code, also conflicts with Mass General Law.
Yeah, that was
so
the
a
cleaning
complete,
up.
Yeah.
complete legal
Legal
analysis
analysis.
and things like that. So yeah,
Which
those
is
are-
ultimately what I think we want to get to, but until we get it organized and agreed to there, it's kind of hard to do that work, so.
And what does this cost?
hold on one second here, it's proposed out in two parts. What I will call the initial or base part of it, which is the codification project. So that's $9,995. And, that includes all the things they talked about. And then the second piece of it, which is the project, the post-project editorial and legal analysis, is $5,400. And then there's an annual fee, maintenance fee of $1,195 for, that's the premium E-code 360 annual maintenance piece.
So it's not excessive.
No.
I had no idea what, is this $100,000 project or is
Well,
it's a
well, it's
$15,000?
Far more reasonable than I expected, far more reasonable.
Interestingly enough, Sarah, we had no idea either. And, you know I was surprised. I had gotten a little bit of some advanced information from talking with the town clerks as to what they had paid. And some of them only did the basically the $10,000 piece. They didn't have the deep dive legal analysis. So there's, you know, the additional 5,500 or so for that. So yeah, I was surprised.
Extremely reasonable.
So we have essentially two vendors. We have certainly the general code presentation, and then we had gotten a number of options on a proposal from Lorraine at Expressive Print to help us with some of this project as well. Does anybody, so here's what I'm thinking about from a timeline perspective. If we're prepared tonight to deal with this and pick one of these two vendors as a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, then what I would do is I would take Board of Selectmen's meeting tomorrow in a meeting. I would carry that information forward and look to get an approval from the Board of Selectmen to move forward with either one of these contracts, however we decide to go, so that we can get the process formalized and get the timeline and start the process.
I have one question and then a recommendation, I think. First question is this is a highly specialized company. At least their presentation, from my point of view, was very impressive, from organizing very complicated, very different worlds. Every town is different, so that was impressive to me. It is a unique specialization, and to your knowledge, and at least I know we've talked about this before and in previous meetings, we know of no other company that really competes to them. I mean, a mistake I made was not asking that question. I should have asked the question, what is your competition? Who do you compete with? Because they don't compete with Expressive Print. Expressive Print is, you know, a printer, and she can help us organize and rearrange our, you know, current bylaws, but she can't put it on a computer. She can't do what they do, because they're obviously making money, or being able to make it inexpensive, relatively speaking, because they have all these other towns. They have already gone through the hard work, and they can, you know, they can get to the reorganization rather quickly because of that. So I guess I would, my question is there any other competitive that we know of? Because I think that question could come up when you go to the select board tomorrow. And the second thing is I just think that because of their experience, that puts them in a different place than Expressive Prints. And while I love to give business locally and support, you know, a local business, that's not Lorraine's expertise. This is their expertise, and I think we could benefit from their expertise, and I would recommend going with this vendor.
Marshall?
Bill, would you go to the board with General Code's proposal, both A and B, to 10 grand and the 5 grand?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because I again, we've got it, and as you said, we don't have to do it this way, but based on the earlier conversations, it seemed to make the most sense for us. And yeah, maybe it's a little bit more money, but I still think it's the way to go. And I don't, once you get on this horse, I don't think you can get off until you get it done right. And
I agree. I mean,
when I talked to Debbie Phillips about this, because remember, Debbie's the one that found these folks, which I'm grateful for. And we specifically talked about, legal analysis and things like that.
Right.
And she was very clear about it. She said, it will take me a long time to do the legal analysis on this. And she said, I very much want to do that going forward. But I think this is the remedy for us short term to, again, get us back to that ground zero. And then as an individual bylaw comes up and things like that, then we send it to her. Now, remember, the way this proposal is put together, when we get it back, before we do anything, we have the option to send it off to town council for her review. And I think that would be the right thing to do too. Say, okay, here we are. What do you think? Matter of fact, I'm going to send her, I was going to do it today and it got away from me, but I'm going to send her, the general code proposal so she can see what we've got back from them. I agree with Walt's sentiments. Love to give the business to a local company, but it's clear that it's apples and oranges here with what they're able to provide us versus what the local vendor can provide us. So
I guess I would say I'd be willing. I know Dave jumped off, so I don't know if we have the quorum. Do we have a quorum to make a motion, but and approval? But and we obviously don't.
I believe we do.
So if we're okay there, I would move that. The only condition I would say is I think that it would behoove us to ask Carolyn, excuse me, ask Carolyn the question and ask Deb, what is their competition? Is there another vendor out there that they compete with other towns? Now, it's hard to imagine that, I'm sure, but I just think we have to be knowledgeable about, is this a monopoly, or is there someone else who does this work? But assuming that there isn't a comparable competitor, I would recommend that you take this to the Board of Selectmen and have the conversation about, moving forward with them.
And again, my other question is, if you go for the whole thing for like 16 grand or whatever it is, that's spread over how long? 2 years?
well, there's in the proposal, there's and I've got it here, but I don't have.
That's all right.
It's at least over 2 fiscal years, because we're starting some of this right now, and obviously at the end of June, we go into a new fiscal year. So it's at least 2 fiscal years. So, and I've already spoken with the town administrator. Prior to, we didn't have any grant funding when I talked to him a month ago. So I talked to him. I think I'd put a number of around $20,000 based on Lorraine's proposal of what we would be looking at for an expenditure over that period of time. And his words to me were, we'll find a way to find the funding. So now that we've got another proposal and it's less than the $20,000.
Right.
We have a $12,500 grant that we believe is going to be able to be applied for or applied to this project. So now, you're looking at what, $3,000-4,000?
Right.
That's short money for us to get this whole thing done and get it squared away.
Yeah, no, I agree. As long as, the part A and part B, I mean, is there anything extra that we might ever, besides the annual maintenance fee, that we would want them to do?
Well, when I read through the proposal, and I've been through it a couple of times now, and I'll probably read it again. So Walt started asking the question about, as we want to change bylaws and things like that. So along with the annual maintenance fee, as you come up with more bylaws and changes and things like that, there are some charges that you're going to get assessed for that. They're saying on average, it's $2,500 to $3,500 a year, depending on the number of pages, the number of, so it's a variable number. So all in, you're probably looking in the $4,000 to $5,000 range, including the annual maintenance fee, to keep this up to date and keep it moving. And then if you're not making any changes in the laws, then you're not spending that $2,500 or $3,500.
Okay.
So again, when you think about the bandwidth that the town has with personnel, the capabilities of the personnel, and if I said to you, look, we're going to be able to keep the code book up, and it's going to be this, and it's going to cost us $1,000 a year,
Mhm.
where do you sign?
Yeah.
One
no.
of the things that struck me about the sections that we'll talk about next week, but we had on our docket to talk about this week, was things that are in our current bylaws that we don't have an answer to. It's like, who controls the document, who runs it, who owns it, who none of the, we're breaking our own bylaws now because we don't have the answers to those questions. And this is a clear example of, hey, it's very clear where our bylaws are kept and how you get to them, and what's the most recent copy. So to me, it's a no-brainer. It
Yeah.
really is. It's just the only question I have is to just make sure. I just want to know, is this the only player in town? Are we missing out? It wouldn't be responsible of me not to at least ask that question. But other than that, assuming that, they seem to have a real good niche market there, and it's really fascinating to me.
I will check. If they're a monopoly, they're clearly not charging enough money.
That's right.
for what they're doing. So,
Yeah.
but I will reach out to Carolyn and I'll ask that question. I think
I
it's
had to laugh though, because I know that the limit of you have to get competitive bids if you're over $10,000. And what's their for entry level bid?
Yeah.
$9,900.
99.95. Yeah.
I almost broke into a laugh at that moment, because
Yeah.
it's they've been working with municipalities long enough that they know what the procurement rules are.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. That was funny. Yeah.
I just want to throw in my 2 cents. This takes the scut work off the table, and so the committee can actually work on the meat of what needs to be fixed in the bylaws.
spot on, Sarah, spot on.
Which I think we would then feed to them.
No, exactly. So as I envision this, as we go through this process, now, one of the things, again, if we choose to go with general code, we're going to have to go back and look through they referenced all the source documents that we've given them. We have to make, and that's what the price is based on, but we know like the signed bylaw and a couple others aren't there. So we'll have to make sure that everything we need to get to them, they have before they start that process. So that's one thing we're gonna have to do. And as we're doing now, going through the individual bylaws, we are going to be able to focus more of our attention on what we're doing there and getting ourselves set up. So not only do we have a better working understanding of what those bylaws are, but also all the weaknesses, so that when they come back to us with, here's the problem with this one, we should be able to look at our list and, check them off and say, yes, yes, yes. And, oh, geez, we missed that one. So, that's a good catch. That type of an interaction, I suspect, is what will happen going forward.
Can the proposed budget with the select board be included contingency or not?
Well, contingency of what?
Well, in other words,
If we go over?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, there's usually, whether it's the reserve fund with your advisory board or something, there's some backup revenues that we usually have in the budget. In the selectmen's budget, actually, this year, I think we're putting a couple more lines in the selectmen's budget that have some, there'll probably be a line in there for bylaw review.
Okay.
And there'll be a number in there. And
Okay.
as it always works, if you don't expend it, it rolls into free cash and you go from there. But we'll make sure that, if something comes up, we're not going to be scrounging around for, a couple $1,000 to.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah, no, I'm good with it. I think it's the way to go.
Okay, so then.
Made the motion.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to word it. I've got the two things in my hand here. So what if we have a motion, and I guess I'll make it because I'm reading it, make a motion to accept the proposal from general code for the Ashburnham codification of the bylaws, as well as the optional component of the post-project editorial and legal services, as well as the ongoing maintenance fees, to accept that proposal or make a recommendation. to the Board of Selectmen.
I was going to say, make a recommendation to the Board of
Selectmen to-
Selectmen and subject to the, understanding, and presenting to them who the competitors are, whatever,
Right.
subject to that. Because I just do think that ultimately we need to have that on record, what that,
Okay,
why we chose them over someone else.
so why don't you put me down as making that motion, Marshall?
I did.
You want to second it?
I'll second,
I will second it, or
yeah, whatever.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? On the motion?
no.
All right, then I'll call the roll. Bill Johnson, yes. Walt Meisner,
Yes,
Marshall Dennis,
Yes.
and then we'll put Dave and what's his Glenn down
Glenn.
for.
Yeah.
extensions. Yeah,
we've already forgotten. He doesn't show up for 1 minute. We've
Yeah.
already forgotten him.
so I do that 15 times a day, so you forget who I'm talking to. So
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
okay, so and if Sarah, if you're still there, you are. So I will, as soon as we're off this meeting, I'll forward this proposal over to you so you can see a more in-depth dive about what's going to be included in there. Anything else that we need to do tonight?
Productive meeting. Thank you very much.
I don't think so.
I move, we adjourn.
All right, Walt Meisner makes a motion to adjourn. I'll second that. Bill Johnson. Bill Johnson, yes. Walt Meisner,
Yes.
Marshall Dennis.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, folks. Sarah,
Thanks.
thanks again for dropping back in.
Thanks, Sarah.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Have a
Okay.
great night.
Take care.
Night, everyone.
All right, see you.